like to. 2 years ago, they introduced these 4 legislators, Senate Finance Chairman, President Pro Tem of the Senate. So you've got Hugh Leatherman and Glenn McConnell, Speaker of the House Bobby Harrell, and the Ways and Means Chairman Dan Cooper. Now again, it's not about the people, it is about the position. But these 4 particular legislative leaders introduced a plan to take care of the state's economy and create jobs. They just didn't think Mark Sanford was getting off his rear end and doing enough. So, here's what they put forward. That's a pyramid. Yes, that is a pyramid.
Where's the eye?
Somewhere underneath all of this. But this is their vision of the economy. We've talked about this before. But you've got, at the top of the food chain here, guess who's running the state economy? Well, how about the 3 research university presidents? Who feels really great about the 3 research university presidents? Picking and choosing winners and losers in the marketplace. Do you guys think they're qualified to do that? No. And then, of course, the governor gets 2 appointments. And the House Ways and Means and Senate Finance Chairman also get an appointment to this entity, South Carolina Research Authority, of which I had never heard. Never heard. Now, you have one of the buildings down here in Charleston. Do you guys know where it is? So you guys know what the SCRA is.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, boy, the SCRA is an interesting little entity. There are 2 that we know of. I don't know how much property these guys own, but it's quite a bit. State government owns a lot of property, by the way. They pay rent to each other. But this right here is the reason that we started looking at how 4 legislators could have this kind of power with your money. And in here, you've got about 37 government entities. There's no tax relief in here. There is no private sector in here. One of the things they are not talking about in this legislature, and it is so critical to point this out, as blunt as it sounds, I have not heard one word about a tax cut across the board to stimulate the economy. Not one word about capping spending and giving the surplus back to the taxpayers. When they talk about a spending cap in Columbia, here's what they mean by that. We'll cap spending and put the surplus in another fund for us to access in a rainy day. So, that's basically what we're dealing with. I'm not going to tell you that there's an easy solution to all this. What I will say is that we have more momentum than we ever have and more focus than I remember on the ruling class. You guys have heard the pundits talk about the ruling class. Well, that connected home for me when I was at a conference recently, and a writer for the Wall Street Journal asked the question, what does the left look like in your state? And he asked each of us. I had to think about that. I said, you know, I don't really think there is a traditional organized left in South Carolina. It's basically government, people who benefit from government, people who work for it, and all the rest of us who pay for it. You've got the lobbyists and the consultants, and frankly, a whole lot of private businesses who are hiring these guys to tell them how to get more tax dollars, none of which paid off. As Dr. Calgano pointed out in Unleashing Capitalism, in 1994 we gave away $34 million in state incentives. By 2009, that number was, or 2008 I think, that number was over $500 million. After Boeing, it's significantly more. How are we doing? We have the 4th or 5th, depending on the month, highest unemployment rate in the country, and among the 5 lowest per capita incomes. That's where we are. It just is. The private sector output is shrinking more. State government is growing. The budget is bigger. The power is what's really disturbing, though. Even more, well, it's all the same thing. You can't really separate the power and the money. But it is extremely disturbing to see the way these guys grab money and power and create more government agencies. with very little oversight. This kind of thing right here is accepted as the right way to govern the state. As a matter of fact, they put out an annual report. This is the last chart I'm going to show you, I promise, but it's worth it, trust me. You guys familiar with, and I know, right, the clusters, right? The cluster strategy. Okay, how are the clusters doing? Well, in an annual report put out by New Carolina, which as one of my board members put it, sounds like a bunch of stoned bureaucrats. But this annual report has a statewide cluster status. Have you seen this? You guys seen this? No, because you've written about this for us. All right, so how are the clusters doing? Now, here you have, and I'm hiding the best part, here you have the clusters. They are the apparel cluster, automotive, distribution services, engineering, agribusiness, nuclear, recycling, textiles, and tourism. Now, I don't think you have to have the degree and the credentials in economics like some of our friends do to answer the question, what ought to be on the left side here?
Windmills.
That's down here. That's down here. But if you're really going to judge the success of clusters, you'd think jobs, income levels, those are the two things. They always tell us this stuff will produce. That's what they always say. We're going to create more jobs and raise income levels. This is what they got. Now, how do we know whether it's working? Well, meet the actualization continuum. Okay? Let me read you what this says. We measure our clusters by looking at how they add value to existing economic development efforts and how far along the continuum to actualization. All right, so what is the actualization continuum? Okay, I'm ready to dive in. I know you guys are. So how are we doing? Hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And by the way, no one's cutting this stuff out. First, you start with mobilize. Down here, mobilize. All right, you got a couple of, all these clusters have mobilized, so yay. Now you're moving up to analyze. Now, the distribution services cluster has made it up to analyze. Okay, it's moved up from mobilize. That's how we know that cluster and the investment of your money has been successful. Going up the food chain, we're into catalyze. Now here, the engineering cluster also went from analyze to catalyze, so that's good news, right? Along with the recycling cluster. That is to collaborate and commit to using resources in new ways. Now, here's where the big jump's been, folks. We've gone from catalyze to realize. Look at these two, all the way up to realize, along with these guys. Launch mechanism to support cluster actions and cross-cutting initiatives.
Thanks to stuff up. You guys got to work on some creative writing.
Come on now, what's the last one?
So, how will we be done? How are we going to know we've really pulled this off? Ready? Actualize. Sustain movement. Track progress. And celebrate collaboration. When we get to a place where we can sustain movement, track progress, and celebrate collaborations, folks,
We're there.
we're done. Which economics class do you guys teach that explains the actualization continuum as a measure of success? It's exactly what it is. There's so much stuff like this, I can't even begin to tell you. From a bunch of these bureaucrats sitting around congratulating each other for clever charts they've come up with, to giving themselves cute nicknames. I'm not making this stuff up. Now, okay, so we know this is a bunch of gobbledygook, right?
Yeah.
We know that this stuff doesn't work. I think a lot of smart people, a couple of whom are in this room, have made a pretty good case to document the failure of this approach. But what you see here is what is disturbing. This is all they feel like they have to do to justify hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion+ of your investment. They put this out the door and then tell you, trust us, we've got this under control. Now that's a problem. And that is exactly why we've been out on the road saying, you know what? You guys need to start holding all of these folks a whole lot more accountable for this. Now, in the end, here's what I think. I don't think government-driven economics works at any level. I think they ought to take every single dime of funding for economic development and give it back to the taxpayers. Every single dime. I honestly cannot point to one thing they've done inside the State House that they have poured money into that's been effective in growing the economy. Because it doesn't work. Has it ever worked? Do you guys know of any examples where a government-controlled economy has produced prosperity?
Prosperity is a government job.
Well, a ton of government, that's a whole different question, right? But as you know, somebody's got to pay. So not only are you paying for your own employees in business, but you're also going ahead and paying for a whole bunch of others. And they're still creating those government jobs, by the way. High-paid ones, I might add. The guys at the South Carolina Research Authority make 6 figures and up. Their payroll of folks making over $50,000 totals $10 million. I calculated it one night. That's what I do. I think it was a Saturday night, too. So, in the end, you know, things aren't going to get any better, folks. They're just not. They're not going to get any better until we say enough. And that's what I'm here to report to you. It's time to say enough.
Enough.
It's time. That's right. It's time to tell them enough. It's time to close down the handout factory, close down the favor factory, and insist on getting your money back. And, by the way, while we're at it, let's change the way this government is run. Don't let them tell you it can't be done. Of course it can be done. These guys act like all this stuff is the weather, you know? It's baseball game day, and suddenly it rains, and we can't play ball. That's what they say. Well, you know, guys, we can't change things because the climate, the political climate, we'll never get that through. Who decides that? You or them? It's time to test whether or not this republic is going to last and the American experiment will succeed by insisting that we have our power back and our money back, and it starts with dismantling this mess here and telling them you don't want any more economic development spending. So that's the gist of what we've been out there on, and I will now finish up my remarks, take any questions you have about this and anything else going on.